Hello friends, my name is Ramasu. Today we shall discuss our topic, the story points. Friend, today's topic is very interesting, especially if you have interest in project management, software development and Scrum. So let's start, friend. First of all, we have to understand that what is story points. Friend, story point is basically a concept which we used in Agile methodologies for estimation of a work. Whenever we are working for any project, the most important question here is that how much time is required to complete a feature or requirement. Okay, so here in the Scrum or Agile methodologies, there is a concept of story point in which we basically estimate the effort required for a feature or a requirement or a task. So they are relative measure rather than an absolute one, and it is a different concept as compared to the man-days effort, because man-days effort means that how much time is required for one man to complete a work. Here in the story points, basically what we do that based on the relative complexity, we estimate the effort for a feature. Here remember that story, whenever we talk about story, we are referring to a user story. A user story is basically a feature required for a product. For example, customer can sign up into the e-commerce solution. So this is a user story. Customer can do the payments through the e-commerce solution. This is another user story. Now the story points is basically the efforts required to complete a feature set, and basically this is a point, this is not the absolute one. So story points are a way to express the size of a user story without specifying the exact amount of time it will take to complete. So key concepts about a story point. First one is the relative sizing. Relative sizing means that the story points are relative measure of effort. Means that we basically compare one story with another, and based on the complexity we basically assign a number or a point to the user story. For example, let's suppose that there are two stories. One is the customer can do the sign up, and second one is customer can do the payment. Okay, so let's assume that the first story that customer can sign up into the application is less complicated, complex as compared to the second story that customer can do the payment. So based on that, for example, we can say we can assign story point 1 to the first story, and because it is less complex, and the second story as point 3. Okay, so why? Because we have understanding that first story is less complex as compared to the second story. So the team compares user stories in style and assign story points based on the perceived effort relative to the other stories. Then the Fibonacci sequence. Friend, story points are often assigned using a scale based on the Fibonacci sequence, that is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 and 21. So the Fibonacci sequence reflects the idea that estimating larger tasks become more uncertain and less precise here. Next is the team consensus. Means that estimating story points is collaborative effort involving the entire team, including developers, testers and other relevant stakeholders. Consensus is reached through discussions, and the team collectively decides on the story point estimation. Here remember friend one thing, that story points are basically are basically deciding based on the consensus among the Scrum development team, because they are the team who is basically working on the stories of feature sets. So their consensus is very important here in that case here. Then consideration of complexity means that a story point consider various factors including complexity of the work, the amount of work involved, if there are any integration points, risk, dependencies. So there are so many points of on which the complexity will be considered. Then velocity. Velocity is basically a measure of how much work a team can complete in a given iteration or sprint. It is expressed in story points. That means it means that how much work a software development team will complete in one iteration, a sprint, that is called a sprint. A sprint is a 3 to 4 week time period. For example, if there are 3 stories which are completed in a sprint and each story is of 5 points, so that means 15 is the velocity of the team. So team calculate velocity by summing up the story points of completed user stories during a sprint. Here remember that velocity is always calculated by based on the completed user stories. Then here is the question that how to estimate the story points, and one approach is the planning poker. Planning poker is basically the approach in which the Scrum development team is sitting in one location, for example on generally sitting in a conference room, and individually they estimate the story point for user story, and then they discuss their estimates with each other, and the process is repeated until a consensus is reached among the team member. So this is called as the concept of planning poker. Then reference stories means that teams often use reference stories that everyone understands as benchmark for estimating stories. For example, previously we have completed similar story for customer sign up with one story point, for example. So you can refer those stories and it can be used as a reference point. Then triangulation means that the complexity, effort, risk, all these factors will be considered and involve considering when assigning story points to achieve a more accurate estimate here as well. Then benefits of story points. First one is the focus on relative effort. Here, a friend, the story points which we are calculating based on the relativity, not on the absolute one. The Mendes effort is focused on the absolute effort. However, the story points is focused on the relativity. Relativity means that complexity comparison of one story with the another one. Then flexibility means the story point allow for greater flexibility in estimation, acknowledging the inherent uncertainty in software development. Consensus building in the process of estimating story points encourages team collaboration and ensures that diverse perspectives are considered easily here as well. Then improved planning. Basically, friend, when we talk about planning with the velocity is the completed story points in one stream, in one sprint. Teams can better plan and forecast future sprints, helping stakeholders understand the team's capacity and the delivery timelines as well. Adaptability means the story points are adaptable and can be adjusted based on the team's evolving understanding of the project and its complexity. So story points are a variable tool in agile development for estimating and planning work. They provide a relative measure of effort, fostering collaboration within the team and allowing for more flexible and adaptive planning. The emphasis is on delivering value rather than adhering to strict time-based estimates.